The world around us is hostile to the Word of God and to biblical values, but we are called to be salt and light, to stand for truth in a decaying culture. We are not called to run from the fire, but be willing to step into the fire. God has placed you at this time in history on purpose and for a purpose. Join us as we get better equipped to address civics and culture from a biblical worldview. Welcome to Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church. Let's welcome our hosts, Debi and Sam Marissa.
Today's topic is Fearfully and Wonderfully Made, and we're joined today by Marissa Nordlum. Nice to have you here.
So good to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. I'm excited for a number of reasons, but I've known Marissa since she was a child, right? Because you were friends with my oldest daughter, and so cool. At birthday parties and sleepovers at my house, and when you were young, and so it's exciting to have you here for that reason, but also because this is just a topic that's really near and dear to my heart, and I'm so excited that you're here to share with us today. So welcome to Into the Fire.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, just about your life and your family? And,
Yeah. My name is Marissa Nordlum. I'm 30 years old. I have been married for almost 10 years.
Wow.
And I know it's crazy thinking that. And my husband Jordan and I have 3 little boys. Our oldest, River, and our middle son, his name is Rhodes. And we have our 2-year-old, his name is Russell. We had 3 kids in 4.5 years, so They came fast. And they're just the best. But I actually grew up, as Debbie said, here at Dream City. And this campus and this church will always be home to my husband and I, and just so near and dear to our hearts. We've got friends for life here. We met here, so we love being back here. So anyways, that's a little bit about me. What do I do? I'm a worship leader, and I'm also a graphic designer by day, worship leader by night. I guess you could say. But I do graphic design for a living. And more than anything, I just love talking about life and about the importance of it.
That's so wonderful. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I'm so excited to have you on. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your first pregnancy journey?
Yeah. I love telling this story because every time you tell your story, I feel like there's little pieces of it that you you feel the Lord just so gently heal each and every time it's told. That's the first thing. Anytime I tell it, I feel like, wow, there's power in the testimony. By me sharing it over and over again, it's been encouragement that, I want to encourage other people to do this as well. So I found out I was pregnant with my first. My husband and I left here at Dream City, moved away to do ministry in a few other states. We were in Texas first, doing ministry out there. And then we moved to California to be youth pastors at a church there. And so we'd been serving, going hard, pouring into students, seeing, the gospel go forth. And about 3.5 years in, I find out I'm pregnant with our oldest, who's River, who's now 5. And I get pregnant. You feel all the emotions that you feel at the beginning of a pregnancy: excitement, nervousness, a little bit of apprehension because of everything you hear the world tell you about pregnancy and what to look for. And, I call it Dr. Google. You look online and all the things. And early on, we had his first ultrasound appointment. And the anticipation leading up to it, the first day, you're going to find out the baby's heartbeat and all the things. So we go to the ultrasound appointment and they can't find the heartbeat. And at his very first visit, and I'll never forget what the doctor told me the first time we went. And it's oftentimes with pregnancies, if we don't find the heartbeat in the first appointment, it could just be that it's, we don't know why it's too early, or 1 out of 3 of these just end in, miscarriage. So just prepare yourself, is what the doctor told me. And so we left that day, and I felt even more fear and apprehension. But I was like, no, I feel the Lord has a plan. And the Lord gave us the name of this child and told me about this child long before Jordan and I had, planned to have him when we first got married. And so I knew the Lord had a plan. And so I just shoved it off, and I was like, I guess I got to wait another however many weeks till my next ultrasound. Anyways, fast forward, we have one, we find his heartbeat, we're celebrating, and then we make it to the 20-week scan. And that was the real test of our faith, I think, is when it started there. Yeah. So we get to his 20-week scan, which is the anatomy scan. And we're in the doctor's office. They're doing the ultrasound, all the things. And the whole time the tech is extremely quiet. And this is my first pregnancy, so I don't know if that's normal or if that it's just, I don't know what's going on. Up to this point, my doctor had been asking me every single appointment, are you sure you don't want to do the prenatal testing? Are you sure you don't want to do the testing, whether non-invasive or invasive testing? They present all the options. And at the time we were living in the state of California, and they present all the options to us and ask us if we want to do testing. And we said, no, we don't want to do testing. We want to wait to find out if there's anything we need to about the baby. And at that 20-week appointment, the nurse left the room for a while and then came back with the doctor. And she sat down and thank God my husband was with me at the appointment. And she looked my husband and I in the eye and said, we think your son may have Down syndrome. There's a strong thick on the back of his nuchal fold, which is a physical marker, not a blood marker, a physical marker.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that are leading us to think this. We're also noticing some inconsistencies around his heart valves. One of them was enlarged, and that was another marker for them. And so with those two things combined, she said, you have a few options. We could do invasive testing if you want to know more how to proceed, basically to decide if you want to keep the pregnancy or not. And, or you can just, you can wait. And the most important thing for me at that time, your parents, this is your first pregnancy. You hear all these things flooded at you. And all I could think about was, is my son going to be okay? Like, is my son going to be okay? Mm-hmm. So my first response was, is his heart okay? Is he okay? And they're like, well, we don't know, but here's basically what your options are. And she said, this is what the doctor said. She's like, I wouldn't stress it, but you have a 1 out of 27 chance, which I have no idea where they got that random number, but 1 out of 27 that it's probably Down syndrome. And if you don't do the testing and you just decide to go forward, but we do want to monitor you the rest of the pregnancy as high risk. And so my husband and I left that day, and we left defeated. And, we had to be at church that night because we serve. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget, we go to church that night, and it was a young adult service that night. And I wept through worship because at this time, the only people that knew about it were me and him.
Yeah.
And I called my mom, and I told my mom, who's also my prayer warrior, I said, Mom, I need you to pray that God's will be done. And if this is his will for River to have Down syndrome, then that's his will. But regardless, let's just pray that whatever his will is will happen in my womb.
Yeah.
And anyways, throughout the pregnancy, there were certain songs that, because of those worship moments that marked where I felt the Lord giving me daily peace, that he was going to be with me. And we made it very apparent to doctors from early on that terminating the pregnancy would never be an option. And that regardless of what challenges were ahead, that we wanted River and that we would fight for anything that came with his life. So we went through the rest of the pregnancy as normal. And I had another ultrasound at 30 weeks because that's what, all the high risk appointments, they want to give you more ultrasounds. And so they gave me another one, and things were still looking a little bit enlarged with his heart, but it looked better. And so they're like, okay, you're going to be good to go till the birth. And so I don't want to get too far into the story before you ask me more questions.
No, you're fine.
You're totally
fine. So anyways, we wait until his birth to find out more. And up until this point, we've only told a close knit group of friends. We didn't post about it. I didn't want any outside voices involved. Right. We kept it really close to a community that we knew would just support us and pray for us. And that's what we did. And that's, I guess, the beginning of the story of what we experienced with the ultrasounds and the doctors.
Wow. Yeah. And you were saying in California that it's a different kind of mindset, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. There's Planned Parenthoods on almost like on many corners. Like it's a very big deal. And the abortion industry profits really highly there. And so there's a strong mindset that, you're offered pamphlets about genetic testing. You're offered information the moment you walk in to the OBGYN clinic about this is what a normal pregnancy should look like, and this is what one that maybe is not will look like, and warning signs to look for. And so that's something right away. being in that medically strong environment made me feel like a case study. And rather than like a human and a life that was cared for, it was always very, you're a case study. And that was a really hard environment that we walked through.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then before we go ahead and finish the story of when he's born.
Yeah,
go ahead and tell that whole.
Yeah, I left you guys on a cliffhanger.
I know. I'm like, wait, what?
I left you guys on a cliffhanger. Okay,
Next week, I know.
So we go through the whole pregnancy. We get up to the birth, and
you still aren't 100% sure.
We're still not 100% sure. And to be completely honest, a big part of us forgot even about the word, because I was like, oh, the doctor gave us a 1 out of 27 chance. Like if that's your will, Lord, that's your will. But we just forgot about the word, and that it could be. And we had this whole prayer community around us, and we're like, come what may, whatever it is. So we get to the birth. And I had a great labor and birth experience with River, and he's born. And when he's born, everything's normal, everything's fine. The doctors bring him to me. We have this beautiful moment. And after his birth, is within the few hours that followed, is when there started to be a lot of whispers in the room. Doctors, one by one, either a pediatrician or high-risk doctors, were starting to come into our room. And this is my first pregnancy, so I don't know if this is normal, if this is, again, we felt like a case study.
Right.
They were coming into our room and whispering, and then they'd come over to the bed and they'd say things like, we really encourage you, even though you didn't during your pregnancy, that you need to do blood testing now to find out what's going on with your son. And at this point, he wasn't having any issues. We were having a normal, first-time parent experience. He was latching, he was breastfeeding, all the things. Everything was beautiful. It was perfect. And right from the bat, we were being pushed into, you need to do this right away because we need to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And from our standpoint, we're like, nothing's going on except for a beautiful family enjoying their first day of life with their son.
Right.
So anyways, we I think the hardest part of the beginning after his birth was when we would when it was presented to us that we were going to do the blood testing. Now we've come to terms with, okay, we definitely want to know if there's any warning signs or things we should be looking for. It was always presented in the fact of these are the reasons why we think he has Down syndrome, because of the shape of his eyes and how far offset they are, and because of the differences in his toes. And they would call out certain things about physical differences in his body from a typical peer, is what they call it within genetic terms in the community. And every time they would say something, my heart would break and begin to almost feel like it would die inside a little more, because I'll never forget the first night he was laying beside me in his little bed, and I looked over and I was like, wow, what a beautiful creation that God has made. And I still think this every time I look at him, perfect in every way. And every doctor that would come in would tell us his eyes look wrong. And they would use terms like that, like they're super far offset. Or you see the separation in his toes, that's not normal. Or his hands, they would mention things about his physical appearance. And the whole time I would tell them, he looks perfect to me. I just want to know, is his heart okay? Are these other things internally for his longevity of his health and well-being, are those going to be the things that are okay? So we decide to order the blood test, and we go home, get discharged from the hospital. Everything's going great, except for the fact that we're just distraught that we've been treated this way by these doctors. Yeah. Anyways, we go home. They recommend us to see a specific pediatrician that's high risk and specializes in genetic things. And they schedule us an appointment with a geneticist to go see them as well. The moment we get home from the hospital, within 2 hours of being home after a normal discharge, River has a breathing episode and his oxygen levels plummet and he's hyperventilating. And I call the nurse line, and they're like, you can't come back here. You've already been discharged. You have to take your son to the ER. He's 48 hours old. We take him. Yeah, 48 hours old. We're already going through all this of, we don't know, maybe this is the Down syndrome. We don't know. And as a first-time parent, you don't know anything of what you're to expect. Right. We were just completely thrusted into, what do we do? What do we do? So we take him to the ER, and his oxygen levels keep plummeting. and I'm in a spiral. I'm 48 hours post-birth.
Oh my goodness.
All my postpartum, you have a normal period of even postpartum, like bleeding and all those things you go through, completely dried up because my body shut off. Even nursing, all just like everything shut off because I didn't know to process what was going on. And within minutes of having a beautiful birth experience, and then all these things being spoken over our son that we're definitely death. He's back now in the ER with oxygen levels dropping and doctors pushing me out of the way, and we think we're going to lose him. And they get him stabilized, and they say we need to transfer him to a high-risk hospital. We can't have him here. And the worst part about it was that they said, and you're not able to go with him.
Oh my goodness.
And so they put him in the EMT, and I'm, first time parent. We've given our whole lives to like just trust the Lord in faith. And all that kept going through my mind was, Lord, how is this happening? Like, I've given all for you. And like, this is my life now. Like, what's going on? I'm going to lose my baby. And so they drive him to the other hospital and they get him stabilized. And he's in the NICU now in Santa Clara in this high-risk hospital. And the story continues. It's a long story. I'll try to condense it from here. So he spends some time in the NICU. And again, we faced many challenges with different doctors. They ordered the blood test. They confirmed it was trisomy 21, which they'd suspected, which was Down syndrome, which we were aware that it could be. So we walk through all the 5 stages of grief. You worry about it first. You come into denial, then you come into acceptance, then you come through all of it. And once we were sitting there with the realization that, okay, he has Down syndrome, I remember he was stabilized in his NICU bed. My husband and I went into a triage room when we got the news because we didn't know what to do. And we just fell to our knees on the ground and started praying. And through tears, we just said, Lord, come what may, help us to walk this path and show us just sustain River's life and let it be a testimony of your goodness. And so doctors in that NICU told us he had things wrong with his throat. He had things wrong with his heart. We were going to have to see a cardiologist. He had all these developmental delays. He may need feeding tubes. He may need extra support, all these things. And so you're thrown into this new environment of a high-risk special needs parent, and you're learning moment by moment, okay, what do we need to do to support our son? Everything else in your life goes on pause for this exact moment. And we just began to do what we only knew to do, which was reach out to our church family and our community that was prayer warriors and send them updates by the hour to pray. Yeah. And so we sent them updates hour by hour of testings they were running or certain doctors that were declaring things over River's life of, well, he may never do this, or because of this, now he has Down syndrome. This is probably going to be a struggle for you. Breastfeeding is probably going to be a struggle for you. Him learning motor skills because of his low muscle tone is probably going to be a struggle. So they were starting to, from birth, speak these things in the room. So my husband, being the strong personality that he is, he's like, we need to bring the iPod or the speaker into the NICU. So we would blast worship music in his little NICU pod, and we made it almost like, but we changed the atmosphere is what we did. Yeah. And I think that's a big part of his testimony. Anyways, we go through all these testings. They come to find out they don't know why he had the breathing episode, is the way that they medically diagnosed it. They said his heart came back perfect. His lungs came back looking great as well. There was no reason for him to then be placed on a feeding tube, even though he was at first when they brought him into the NICU. They took it out by the time he was discharged. And so we left with no answers and not sure what to do other than to be like, we know the Lord has healed him, but what's next? How do we walk this journey out in faith? And how do we surround ourselves with the right community that's going to speak faith over our son and not the medical community that's going to constantly tell us what he may never be able to do.
And what's wrong with him.
And what's wrong with him.
Yeah.
And so we left that day with many questions when we finally were discharged from the NICU, but praising God because we knew that the Lord had sustained his life. And there's definitely more to the story, but the Lord kept giving me, I'd asked the Lord early on, God, I need you to give me a vision, give me glimpses of him and his future and different moments of his life to know that everything's going to be okay. Because early on he had told me, like before he's your son, he's my son.
Yeah.
And I think that's true with any birth or any pregnancy. Yeah. Like before there are children, they're his. And the Lord is true to his word, as he always is. He's always faithful. And he kept giving me reminder after reminder and vision after vision of his life. And some of them have come to pass in a beautiful way.
Praise
and
God.
yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that's a little bit of the beginning of the story,
Yeah.
but we definitely walked through a lot in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking how, scary. I couldn't imagine being a first time mom and then being like, oh, you need to do all of these tests and I was thinking about that, all of the tests that you need to order. And it's like, why do you want me to do that?
Yeah.
Right?
And the big thing too is it was encouraged, and this is a big thing in the medical community. It's strongly encouraged once you have a diagnosis, right? You need to see a geneticist, and that's not necessarily inherently a bad thing. But what I've learned from talking to a lot of other special needs moms is the weight that was put on them by those appointments did more harm than good.
Yeah.
Right.
It often does. It draws more fear. And it draws more stress and more, there's power of life and death in the tongue.
Right.
And what it definitely does is it speaks out more death. And so early on we decided, we know what we need to know about him, as long as we knew by 9 months he was cleared by the cardiologist for his heart. And
Because that's not an uncommon.
it's not, oftentimes,
issue, right,
yes,
that
when
accompanies Downs, right? Is heart issues.
Yeah. I think it's over 50% of babies that have Down syndrome often come with a heart genetic effect, a defect to their heart. And so that was my main concern. So once we knew that his heart was okay, he was just a normal boy.
Yeah.
And that we were supposed to raise and love and foster and lead him to Christ and teach him about Christ. And there was nothing else that we need. And of course, there'll be challenges down the road and, therapists and all the things that any special needs parent encounters. Right. But the way that you love on and help your child grow is no different. And so anyway, so we decided early on how to kind of separate the medical advice from that's advice.
Yeah.
But this is our son. Right. And this is what the Lord has spoken to us about his life. And so there were crazy things written about us even in his chart in California. When we left California and moved, we came to Arizona, they transferred his medical charts to our doctor here in Phoenix. And I laughed looking at what they wrote about us in the chart. These parents believe that the Lord has touched their son and like all these crazy things. And I'm like, you know what? Let them write it. I was like, let them write it.
Right.
Because I would rather it be said that I was the crazy, God-fearing faith mom than not.
Yeah.
So let them write it about me in my
Well, and you don't know how that
is so
impacted
funny.
them either watching that.
True.
It
that
definitely,
walk
it
too.
definitely did. I wrote his doctor a letter when we left, and she gave us a lot of grief about things she spoke, and I just let her know, I can't wait for you to see what the Lord does in my son's life as he grows.
Yeah.
Because I'm just a vehicle for him to tell his testimony all the days of his life, and
that.
he'll
It's
continue
so
to do
good.
it as he gets older, and
so
he does it as himself. Yeah.
So good. And so just so that if people are unsure about what that means, so let me make sure that I have this correct, but there's different ways that Downs what it actually looks like genetically, but typically it's the 21st chromosome, right? That there's an extra chromosome. Sometimes it can be 2 extra, but usually it's 1.
Yeah, there's actually a few
right?
different variations of Down syndrome, but the most common is trisomy 21, which is what River has, and it's a 3rd copy of the 21st chromosome.
And so with that, 3/21, March 21st is World Down Syndrome Day, which
It's
is
a
why I
big
remember
deal.
that. That's why I remember it, because that's 3/21, because you have a 3rd 21st chromosome.
Yeah.
Talking about, because I always post something about World
yeah.
Down Syndrome Day.
It's a big deal in our house now. We wear our mismatched socks, and I even have a bracelet on that's the blue and yellow, which is the colors for Down syndrome. It's made by someone in the community. But it's, what's so cool about the Lord too is we walked through all this where we're like, it may be a part of our story, we don't know, during the pregnancy, and then after birth when we got the blood results back, and then you were like, wow, this is now forever a part of our family's DNA, a part of our story. And I think a big deal with that I think a lot of parents that have any type of special needs that they walk through and becomes a part of their story is allowing the Lord to say, you know what, Lord, let you use this through our family and through our story. And oh my gosh. And I know I've told Debbie this before, but like River is the glue to our family in every way. He's the joy of our lives. And it breaks my heart to think of what our life would look like without him. In every way, he's like such a gift and so precious. And the hand of God, I always tell people this, and people always say, I feel like he sees angels and he sees the spiritual realm. And I'm like, he does. He's very close to that spiritual aspect and to the Lord. But when you love people like the way Jesus did, and you love the least of these, that's kind of what you experience. And you experience, like we've experienced the love of Christ in a deeper way by watching him. Yeah. And by being a part of the Down syndrome community now, which is just beautiful.
Well, I have a cousin who's adult.
That's awesome.
That's Downs.
That's awesome.
And it seems to me and I have other friends who have children that have Down syndrome too. But there's just a purity. There's like it's hard to put into words, but everyone that I've ever met, it's just like this pure soul, like just no guile or no, you know what I mean? Like it's just pure joy and love, and in a way that is not like other people. There
really is. And I remember after we found out, your mind goes a million different ways of being like, my only thought that I ever had after I found out was, I just want my son to be okay. It wasn't like, I never once thought I don't want him. It was only, I want to know that he will live a full life. Yeah. And there's things I didn't know in the beginning that we had to grieve. Like, will he ever drive? Will he ever get married? Will he ever go to college? Will all those things that a parent, you make these plans for your kids. You make it, even saying it that way. And the Lord is so good because he walks with you and he journeys with you as you process and you grieve and you come to realize, I may think about what steps I want to take, but the Lord, he determines our steps. Yeah. And so, but what's so powerful is you're exactly right. There's like this beauty and purity to the Down syndrome community. And because what the 21st chromosome is it's from conception. Yeah. And when you learn more about how that chromosome develops, for a while I asked myself, as the first few months of his life, was there anything that I did? And I just didn't know at that point. I said, was there anything that I did that could have caused this? Did I maybe eat something weird, or was I in a certain area, or all these things that I let me bear the weight of. And I think through good knowledge and then also counseling and just trusting the Lord, I realized, no, this is, the Lord never, with any of our lives, he never wants us to experience sickness or, disease or anything that causes harm, but he'll use it for his glory, and he always does. And, the purity that is a part of that, like, it's a special thing. And, a lot of people have seen the love of God through River already, even in his young age. So
that's so beautiful. Something that I don't think maybe a lot of people realize are the state laws around Downs and abortion. And like you said, that once the nurse, she got kind of quiet. And I feel like, were you presented with those options quite often, or kind of how was that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think because of the crazy faith people we were,
note to self, don't even offer.
To this really like, legalistic, California medical environment. I think because of that, we were presented it in the beginning, and that, my doctor would ask me every appointment, I think because she was thinking he has Down syndrome. Are you sure you don't want to do the testing? Are you sure, Marissa, you don't want to do the testing? And every appointment I was in, literally, like, and I think it's the Lord I know it's the Lord that protected me and gave me like a pregnancy bliss the rest of my pregnancy, even after we found out he could have Down syndrome. Yeah. I just had this utmost confidence. No, we don't want to do it. Whatever challenges we face ahead, as long as I know through the ultrasounds and through all the other things that nothing's wrong, that we need to like urgently prepare for after birth, because sometimes that does happen.
Yeah, right.
As long as I know that none of those things are a case, I don't care. we will walk that path when he's here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so we were presented it in the beginning. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of other people within the Down, and unfortunately I had a good experience in that sense, but I know a lot of other moms within my network that were not as fortunate to present that. And many of them are often offered the moment you find out in utero that your child has trisomy 21, would you like to terminate this pregnancy? And I mean, it's by state, the rate varies, but there's states that are as high as close to 90% of children with Down syndrome are aborted in utero. And every time I hear that, my heart just breaks. Because I think about precious souls like my son, and I can't fathom, what life would be like without him. Yeah. And I think what's hard is parents are not presented with the best options or the best advice from doctors. And so in many ways, when they're told these things, your life will be over. You will constantly be, in medical appointments, and this is going to really affect your life in a negative way. Like I have friends that have, experienced things like that. And so they're almost seen as more of a burden. And that couldn't be further from the truth. But I think because of my biblical, backing and understanding and my faith in the Lord, praise God for that. I knew that regardless of what lie ahead, like this, Lord, is what you have for our family. And you've called our family to steward. And what's so powerful about being on the other side of it and now being 5 years into his life is that I don't see his Down syndrome as his identity. It's not his identity. Right. It's a part of who he is, but it's not who he is. Right. And I also don't see it as a hindrance. It's never once been an obstacle in the sense that I remember early on, we had him a few years back in swim lessons, and another mom even said to me out loud to the swim instructor, wow, I had no idea kids with Down syndrome could do this. They could learn to swim. And the swim instructor apologized to me afterwards and said, I'm so sorry. And I said, you know what? It hurt my heart to hear that, but there's just not enough awareness out there of what all they are capable of. Yeah. And the awareness needs to happen so that people know that that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me is not just for a typical, they would refer to it as a typical or someone with a genetic condition. So it's not just for that. It's for every creature, every person that's been made in the image of God. And that's for them too. That's for my son as well. And so, Yeah,
I love that. And that's what I was saying before we even started recording. I was kind of trying to decide about like a title and all of those things, but that, so much of what you're saying is that, medical, and there's a time and a place for all the medical stuff, right?
Sure, there definitely is.
But it's viewed through this lens of this is an issue, this is a problem, this is a disadvantage, this is a whatever. But it's like that's not his identity. Is that he's a child of God? Yeah, right. God, he was fearfully and wonderfully made. That was the title, right? He's fearfully and wonderfully made. And so what he can do is whatever God wants him to do, right? That's right. Yeah. That there's not a limit, that we all have physical limitations depending on how tall you are or how whatever. Right, I mean, there's any number of things that can limit, whether you're a boy or a girl or whether you're whatever, as far as what you can do physically, but that's not your identity, no matter what it is. That's not your identity. Yeah. And I don't know why it is so heartbreaking to me too. And you're talking about the numbers of, 90%. It's somewhere roughly like an average of 75% of those babies are aborted. And in some countries, they're talking about eradicating Down syndrome, like in Iceland or different places. And it's like, okay, listen to what you're talking about. You didn't eradicate the cause of it, right? Or from it occurring, you eradicated the people, right? That those are human beings that were made in the image of God, and that have been eliminated from society. And what a loss that is to the world, right?
Yeah, there's so much value that our differences bring. Yeah. And I mean, that's the kingdom of God, isn't it? Like, and we are fearfully and wonderfully created. That verse has been an anchor verse my whole life. And it's funny how the Lord will do things throughout your life that you don't recognize in the moment are for your future. And I think that verse has been one of them because I've loved it my whole life. And I remember after River was born, the second half of that verse talks about, you knit me together in my mother's womb. Before I was put on this earth, your eyes saw my unformed body. You created me. And every aspect of who I am, like he knows the end from the beginning. Yeah. The start from the finish. And when I think about that and I remind myself of that, I think that's why I'm so passionate now about being a voice for those families that feel like they need someone to stand in the gap for them. There's a song that I love. It's called Child of God. And it's more of like an instrumental that Forrest Frank has. And in that he says, it's a clip from his grandfather. And it says, there's no disqualifying disability that the Lord cannot use that he says, you are not a child of God. There's nothing that will ever disqualify. So what does that mean? It means that good news of salvation is for all of us. It's for the special needs. It's for the people that are, strung out on drugs. It's for the single mom that's all alone. It's for everyone. There's no disqualifying factor or disability that God says you cannot be my child. And when I hear that, I just weep because River is a child of God. And my heart burns. Like I realized soon into our journey with him that I knew what the Lord had called me to do. And it was to encourage every other mom that was maybe caught in the crossroads of what do I do now with this news that your child or that, your child or for the person themselves, their life, they are a child of God. Yeah. And, and so, now I know it's forever a part of our story and it will forever be. And I look at it as an honor. It's never a burden. It's an honor that we get to steward his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a big brother to two little
kids and two little boys. And he knows it too. He loves the Lord. He loves to worship. He loves to play the drums. He goes to school and we've seen the Lord time and time again because of the faith we've spoke over him, really put him in positions to use him. He'll play worship songs in his therapy sessions with teachers that are not Christians. And I've watched them come to tears and ask me what the music is that they're listening to as he's talking. I want to praise the Lord in his therapy session.
That's so cute.
I remember moments when he was 2, he wasn't walking yet. And oftentimes with Down syndrome comes low muscle tone and delayed disability. And so doctors would tell us that. And so I guess this is an example of how we take what they say. We know what we need to, classify as. And then we would say, okay, but Lord, we know that you can do anything through our son. So every night I'd go in his room and I'd put my hands on his legs and I'd pray, Lord, help this man get up and walk. Help him, Lord, just strengthen his legs, strengthen his core, help him to do it. I know you're going to do it. And he went one day from butt scooching to running. And it was a miracle of God. Doctors told us he would need orthopedic inserts in his shoes, maybe for his whole life. And he ended up not needing them, and they were shocked. Gosh. Yeah, and there's been time and time again where that has happened. He's now in a regular school attending a full-day kindergarten next year with typical peers, is how they'd say it. And just daily, I watch, and I'm always shocked by it. And I know the Lord laughs every time in our internal dialogue because he wants to use that community to show off his glory. Yes. And a big part of parenting, I think, a child with special needs is saying, okay, how can I partner with you, Lord, to steward the unique call on my child's life? It may not be that they get married someday. Maybe, you never know, but it may not be that. It may not be that they, win the Nobel Peace Prize or whatever it is. But for whatever it is, Lord, how can I help them reach that purpose that you have for them and steward that gift? And so, that's been a big part of our story.
Yeah. That's so good.
I love it. Did you have another question or?
Not directly about this, but around how people can, I guess, become better educated around.
And then I have one more, but go ahead and answer that.
Yeah. I think that we're starting to get to a place where we are, and World Down Syndrome Day is a great example of this. We're seeing people talk about Down syndrome more, which is great. We're seeing it in movies more.
Yeah.
There's a really popular actress that was featured in one of the Hunger Games, recent Hunger Games, and she has Down syndrome. There's
She's
other
been a model too.
Yeah,
and all that.
she
I
is.
love
Yeah,
her.
she is. She really
She's
is great.
fantastic. Yeah.
I follow so much.
I can't remember her name, but
I think her name's Sophia.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
I
think it
follow
is.
so much of the Down syndrome community and their accomplishments. But anyways, I think as a society, we're starting to take steps there, but there's still a lot of work to do. Like it's baby steps. And so I think awareness is a big deal. I think exposure to it is important. I think even churches having special needs ministries is so valuable. I've met so many other moms, whether it's Down syndrome or any other disability, that feel like their child may be a burden or a distraction. And so because of that, they A, won't go to church, or B, they won't go to, drop them off in Sunday school. So having a place for those children is valuable. And some churches have...
We just recently added that here at Dream
Which
City.
I love
special
about
needs.
Dream City so much.
Yeah,
is
childcare.
But that's been a big deal for this church for so long, is just honoring the special needs community. And that would be something more churches could do better. And that's a big, I think, awareness step.
Yeah.
And then just deepening yourself into a community. I know there's a few places out actually here in Phoenix where you can support by volunteering, or just even allowing people with Down syndrome to now get regular jobs in the workplace at certain places. That's also becoming more popular. And so I think those are a few big steps that we can start to take to do better and to know more about it, but also know more about how the value that they add. Not take away.
Right.
And that's a big deal.
And you have an organization that you are part of, right? What is that called?
Yeah, I'm a part of an organization here in Phoenix. River is in our family. It's called Gigi's Playhouse. It's in Scottsdale. And they are a Down Syndrome Achievement Network. And they have playhouses, is what they call them, all throughout the United States, and some outside of the United States as well. And what they do is they support individuals with Down syndrome and their families. They come alongside of them. They offer free programming and resources, completely funded by donors, free to the families, where they're able to get additional, on top of state funding, additional support, therapy, and then also just programming, community.
Yeah.
And it's not just for a certain age. They go all the way from infants all the way to adults. And so they have adult programs that are beyond beautiful of what they do. But then they also have programs for first-time parents that are just now discovering that their baby has Down syndrome, to meet other parents that are walking through the same journey, and to come alongside them and share, doctors, share therapists that they love, share advice, share what works for them, share, just share community, and to bond over having something in common that's so unique. And it's a beautiful place. It's been a godsend for our family.
Love it.
Yeah.
So cool.
And so real quick, two really quick things. And then one of the things that's happening right now in Arizona is that we have a law on the books that says that it is illegal to discriminate with abortion based on sex, race, or disability. Perceived or real is the way that it's worded in there. It's like perceived or actual, I think, is because a lot of times they don't know exactly when things are being diagnosed. That cannot be the only reason that someone is having an abortion. They can't be targeted for abortion because that's eugenics, right? Talking about that. And there's a lawsuit happening right now where they're trying to overturn that law. There are some people fighting to keep those things on the book. So I just want to know what you have to say about that as a parent of a child with Down syndrome, about why those laws are important to protect children.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And to protect the moms as well.
Those laws, yes, it's dual fold. Those laws are so important to protect the unborn life because of the statement I said earlier. There's no disqualifying disability that is not worth fighting for life.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing that is not worth fighting for life. And I think that's why it's important to protect the unborn. But I think even more so the parents who are then faced with the decision. There needs to be better education about in those doctors' offices and life spoken, and about what the Down syndrome community is able to accomplish. And I think that's why media portrayal of it is also important. And I'm thankful we're starting to see more of it. Because like that mom at the swim lesson, she had no idea that my son with Down syndrome could swim. He can swim like he swims great. He's a fantastic swimmer. But I think awareness is important for those reasons. So I think, yes, it's extremely important that those laws, that we fight for them, because it's life, and all life is worth protecting. And I think that's why it's important for parents to be educated as well.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, we're going to end this, but what is your piece of advice for parents who get some kind of diagnosis like that? What is one mom to another?
Oh my gosh.
What do you say? Just what little nugget? You've said a lot already, so we don't need to, but just your parting message to parents who get some sort of diagnosis like that in utero.
I would say your life is going to be more beautiful than you could have ever imagined it would be without that baby. Fight for their life, speak life over them daily, and watch what the Lord will do when you give your child back to him. It's like Abraham laying Isaac on the altar. And I feel like I've daily done that with River. I'll be like, Lord, before he's mine, he's yours.
Yeah.
And I know that you have a plan for him that is far greater than anything my husband and I could have dreamed up for his life. And so I would encourage the mom or dad caught in that middle, fight for their life, hold on to hope, and watch the Lord blow your socks off, because their life is beyond value, and it's worth fighting for.
So good. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. This has just been so wonderful. And thank you for joining us on Into the Fire, powered by Dream City Church.
You can listen to this podcast on Apple and Spotify, and follow us on social media to find all the info on the show notes. To learn more about Dream City Church, visit our website at dreamcitychurch.us. Thanks for listening.